Welcome to the 4Q podcast, episode number 6. This episode is with Kendra Perry. Now, this episode is sort of around how does a skier who fell off a cliff overcome the inner shit and become a health coach who lives on top of a mountain? It's a great question. Kendra offers some light on this and shares with us how she manages to create this life of living the life that she wants, the lifestyle that she wants, and admittedly having the money that she wants as well. It's an amazing podcast and I can't wait to share it with you. Two of the themes that you'll hear in this episode that we talk about towards the end particularly is around energy and spirituality and the myth of balance, but how balance is really important. So you'll see in our Life Reset and Transformation course, which is on our website, and the sponsor of this podcast, which is Savasana Collective, is we talk about mapping out our energy and put some practical strategies in place so that you can, enhance that most precious resource of energy as well as time in the same activity. So I definitely encourage you, if you haven't given a go of our free activities online for the Life Reset and Transformation, check it out at savasanacollective.com. I definitely encourage that. And spirituality too. Again, one of the 4 aspects of the biopsychosocial spiritual model is, of course, spirituality. Now, again, something we've mentioned several times is that this isn't around organized religion always or having a really structured spiritual practice, but it's also around your connectedness with the outer world, your connectedness with each other, and how you make meaning and purpose. What is the meaning of your life? What is the purpose and what guides you? How do you listen to the signs of the universe or the signs of life around you? What are your guideposts? And so Kendra's on a journey to explore that, but it is something I wanted to mention because not only do we include it in our framework for our courses and all of that, and we have resources you can use for that, but it's a theme that keeps coming up in these guest posts that I'm having. So I think it's really worth mentioning. All right, enough from us. Don't forget that this podcast is sponsored by Savasana Collective. You can find us at instagram.com/Savasana Collective. That's our main hub. Or you can go to our website, savasanacollective.com, and join our email list for all the tips, tricks, and extra tidbits that you don't get on our other sort of major platforms. All right, let's jump into today's episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did. Hey, I'm Sheena Shuey. I'm a registered social worker and host of the 4Q podcast. I'm passionate about normalizing, not pathologizing life, and that's not easy. So each episode, I have amazing guests on to share the messy, beautiful ups and downs of life in 4 key questions with tips and tricks along the way. There are moments in life where you can embrace your story and understand that it's okay not to feel okay sometimes. So let's get into it. This is the 4Q podcast. Kendra, I'm so happy to have you. Thanks for jumping on with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be hanging out with someone on the other side of the world.
We all know you live in a beautiful part of the world. Every time you're posting one of your hikes or one of your, pictures from your side of the world, so for those listening is British Columbia and Canada, it's just amazing. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful to live in the mountains. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and I think your vibe on your Instagram and your vibe around your coaching, it reflects that feeling, like that natural, easygoing feeling. I definitely feel that. And looking at your pictures always makes me just want to go back to Canada. but we all know that can't happen right now, right?
Well, maybe in the future, let me know if you're in town. I'll take you for a hike.
I'm terribly unfit because of the lockdown, so let me get my fitness back. But let's jump in. So we're going to do the 4 R's, which is the framework of our 4Q podcast today. And so let's start off with reflect. So obviously, for those who are unfamiliar with Kendra, Kendra's bio is absolutely amazing. So Kendra started out as a functional health coach, and after investing in a million courses, like most of us have done, and a ton of trial and error and more failures than she cares to admit, Kendra clawed her way to 6 figures in just over 3 years, which amazing. Kendra's now an online business strategist and a course creator for health and wellness practitioners. She's on a mission to help health coaches go from broke as fuck to wealthy as fuck using her Health Coach Accelerator Method. To date, she's helped hundreds of health coaches, over 200 to be exact, grow their practices, attract consistent clients, and blow up their bank accounts. And so basically, you know, she's gone from that, and she's also an outdoor enthusiast who runs an online coaching business. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah. So I run my business from the top of a mountain. Me and my partner, Ryan, we live on 2 acres, basically at the top of a mountain. We have no neighbors, and we're trying to go off grid because we hate the government, probably now more than ever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been here for about 11 years, and my partner Ryan grew up here, and we actually both run online businesses. I do business mentoring, and he is a film production, and he's an outdoor adventure photographer. Hence why I have so many beautiful photos of myself on hikes, because I always get to be the model. But yeah, like you said, I got my start in health coaching, and it was an accidental path. I like to think that I was meant for entrepreneurship, because I very vividly remember in high school, in like the last couple years, and everyone's getting excited about their career, and I was just depressed because I hated the schedule of 9 to 5, you know, like waking up and having to run out the door and doing something I didn't want all day. And I was like, okay, so then I just pick a career and just keep doing this forever. Like, really? Like, I was like, fuck that. Like, this sucks. And so I ended up in a like seasonal work. I've never actually had like a real job in my life, and kind of just floated around, and then eventually stumbled upon, you know, the fact that I could start an online business. But, you know, I think for people in our generation, it was never really presented as an option at all. Like, no one ever talked about it. And mostly what we heard about it was pretty negative, you know, like most small businesses fail and it's really hard. My parents were like, yeah, don't do that. Like, you know, get a job with a pension. And I mean, I just never resonated with that. So I think I was destined for this life, but I just didn't know it until I was in my late 20s.
Yeah. And a couple of things I want to pick up on there is that, first of all, reflecting on, who you are, and you're 100% right. Those messages that our generation got was very much, it's so hard to start a business. You have to be well connected, you know, especially, you know, there was those messages of, unless you're well connected or you're well funded, it ain't going to happen. So, you know, why bother trying type thing. And I think as well, the bar was set so low. So I think the previous generation to us, the bar was set low, and they actually achieved more than what they wanted. So they were like, this is great. Why try to get more? But our generation was sort of not, you just be happy with what you have, be grateful for what you have. Don't, you know, just stay in your box kind of thing. Do the conventional. So yeah, and especially nowadays, given that we have these online resources, it's just a whole nother world. So yeah, it's amazing to hear how you've basically embraced that lifestyle. I can imagine that must have been a bit unsettling for your friends and family around you.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest, I still don't think most of my friends really know what I do. I think they think I have a hobby and I just like pull money out of my ass, basically. But yeah, my parents were really worried. But as soon as they realized that I was making bank, they were like, oh, we support you.
It's so funny. It's like,
it's funny that that's the standard. Like, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, we live in a society, a monetary society, where we kind of are stuck to the fact that we need money to survive in some instances. However, if you said to your parents, hey, I'm really happy, I have an amazing lifestyle and I'm getting by, it's kind of like, well, how much money are you making? That stuff. It's kind of like the lifestyle design is what we really should be focusing on. Obviously the monetary stuff helps fund that. But yeah, I think you really advocate, what lifestyle do you want as well? And you live it, like you breathe it and you show it. So I think that's a great place for not just business owners, but anyone who's sort of like, actually, I want to design my life to the way I see fit, because, that's what this podcast is really about, is sort of saying we are all living in a stressful, anxiety provoking environment. So of course we're all going to feel stressed, anxious and depressed unless we change something, change our mindset, change our lifestyle, change external factors like how connected you are to the government, So yeah, so I just love what you do. And yeah, I guess, but I want to, people will see the outside amazing version of you, and on Instagram again as well, you come across as this confident, really grounded person, and again, you can feel that. But I want to go back to, I guess, the second part of this 4Q podcast, which is the redefine. So redefine is obviously around, what makes you who you are. Like, was there a hard moment that really changed things for you and your perspective and meaning of life? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, because there was really a big defining moment where I did decide to choose a different path. And, I used to struggle a lot with anxiety and just kind of like maybe self-hatred, and just like, I was kind of miserable, it's interesting because I like to think I was doing lifestyle design before it was trendy, but I never wanted that 9 to 5. So, and I did go to university, but I never used my degree, because after getting out of university, I got into seasonal work and I started working in forestry. So I used to plant trees. I was a wild land firefighter. I used to fight fires in the forest. I designed cut blocks for logging operations. And that work was great in a way because it was seasonal. I'd work from April to September-ish, October-ish, and then I'd take the winter off. And I've always been a big skier. And so I was kind of living that life, but I still wasn't fully happy. And I think it's true for a lot of people in their 20s, right? Like, we don't know who we are. We're still trying to figure it out. We don't have confidence, So I was generally very confused. And when I moved to the town I currently live in, I moved here to be a ski bum initially. I was like, I just want to be a ski bum. I just want to ski all winter. And I actually got scouted out off the chairlift by a photographer who was like, you're a great skier. Do you want to be in photos? So I started shooting with this photographer, and then realized, because I skied my whole life, I competed in high school nationally, and I was like, well, I can be a professional skier. This is amazing. I was getting all this attention by the locals at the hill and by photographers. And I was like, well, maybe this is what's going to make me happy, right? I'm going to be a professional skier in the winter, and I'll do my forestry work in the summer to sort of like pay the bills and that sort of thing. And things were going really well until one day I got a little cocky and I jumped off this cliff when I was kind of like the end of the day. Probably shouldn't have been out there, was a little bit tired, probably had smoked a little joint or something like that. Was probably a little bit stoned. And I totally fell, and I knew instantly that I'd messed up my knee. Like, it was, there was a pop, right? And luckily, from my competition experience in high school, I'd actually learned to ski on one ski. So I just skied down on one ski from the top of the mountain, and was like, oh, it's fine. I'm probably fine. And as it turned out, so in Canada, you guys may or may not be familiar, but because we have a primary public health system, there's a wait list for everything, right? And even to get an MRI, there was a year-long wait list. So I'd met with this surgeon, and he was like, well, you could wait the year for the MRI, or we could do a scope, which is basically like cut you open, look and see what it is. So exploratory. But he was like, I'm pretty sure it's just meniscus, which is sort of like the tissue around your knee, the cartilage around your knee.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's probably not going to be a big deal. I can go in there, I can clean it up. It's a 6-week recovery. You'll be good. So I was like, sweet, I'm in, I'm down. And once he was in there, and I was like, all messed up on drugs, from whatever they had given me. I was lying on this hospital operating room table, and he just opened up my knee and he's like, oh, your meniscus is fine. He's like, but your ACL is in shreds, and ACL is the anterior collateral ligament. For anyone who's a skier or a soccer player or a runner, that is like the nightmare of injuries. Like you need reconstructive surgery, and it's a long ass recovery time. But where I live, it's almost like a rite of passage because everyone blew out their ACL around here from skiing. But anyways, I was devastated because I knew like I wasn't going to be a professional skier anymore. And I was super devastated. And I was also very confused because my job required my body, right? As a forestry technician, I hike around the bush all day and like not on nice trails, like bushwhacking, falling on my face, like super hardcore, like horrible, So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm like, my dreams are over. And I ended up having to go on medical unemployment. And then I was not working for a very long time and, not able on crutches for a very long time, like single, alone, lonely. And I just didn't really know what to do with myself. And because I was so bored, I had nothing to do. I could barely leave my apartment. I decided to start a blog because at that point, I was super interested in health and wellness. I had been having a lot of acne, and I was looking for kind of a natural way to get rid of it. So along the way, I'd become just very obsessed with that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to start this health blog. I loved writing, and I just started writing articles like every single day. And this was 2011, 2012. So when blogging was like a thing and you could monetize a blog, right? So I was like, well, instead of being sad and depressed and like sitting at home and like just waiting to recover so I can go back to forestry, which, doesn't pay very well where I live, I was like, well, maybe I could make money with a blog, with this health blog. So I tried to make it as a blogger and I was not successful at all. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I made like $1 a month off of Google AdSense or something like that. If that was even a thing back then, I can't remember, but I just didn't really know what I was doing. And so I continued to struggle, but I did eventually discover health coaching. I heard about it on a podcast and I was like, okay, well, this is actually something I could sell and I could just sell my information. And so I ended up doing a certification and then starting an online business. And I'm actually very grateful for that injury because I don't know where I would have ended up, but it really forced me to think outside the box and think about other options in my life that I could be doing instead of doing what everyone does in my area, which is, for the most part, like not get paid much. Like they get the lifestyle, but not the money. And I managed to get the money and the lifestyle. So
boom, boom, win-win. And wow, so what an amazing journey. But I can imagine going through it wouldn't have been easy. So can you tell me, in that middle part, when this character building in the Redefine, the people I've been talking to and I myself, there's these moments of redefining your life and redefining meaning and purpose. But it is hard and it is not easy and it can be a little bit soul crushing because sometimes you feel like you've lost pieces of yourself and then you've got to sort of re-put yourself back together, but you don't know what that looks like yet. Can you tell me a bit of what that experience was for you, because you just lost these jobs and also when you have an injury, when you're a very physical person and then you get an ACL injury. My husband, so many of his people, because he plays football, footy, everyone has ACL injuries and it's a big deal. And it can, a lot of people get depressed during that time because they're very physical, they can't do things. So could you share a little bit about that period of your life and how you managed to still get up and try things and not just sort of give up?
Yeah. So I definitely had a full-blown identity crisis because I've been a skier my whole life. I remember skiing before I remember walking, competed all through high school, barely went to high school because I was competing so much. And I really defined my identity was very much tied up in being a skier. And so for those 2 years where I wasn't a skier, I just didn't know who I was anymore. I was like, well, who am I if I'm not a skier, right? Like it was just so part of my core.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Like it was incredibly difficult, and definitely like I remember, after that surgery and just like lying in this dark waiting room or whatever it was where they'd wheeled me in or whatever. And I was all alone and I was just like devastated. Like I couldn't even process what had happened. And I remember my friend came to pick me up and I wouldn't even talk to him. I didn't even talk. It was like maybe a 40-minute drive or maybe an hour drive back to my house from the hospital. And I was just like silent. I was like, this is fucked. I hate this.
Yeah.
Right. And, it was really difficult. But really what really helped me was actually the rehab, and the physio, because I was so committed to being a skier again and skiing at the level that I had previously been skiing at. So I knew that I had to devote myself to the rehab. So, you know, I was incredibly strict with it. I was incredibly serious. I didn't have a job, so that helped. I did physio for hours a day. And, you know, I remember because I drove a standard at the time, a manual, and my left knee was the one that I injured. So I would sit in my vehicle and practice pushing the clutch because I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. I need freedom. And that was part of my physio, but I would just go to the gym every day and I was so committed. And I remember the first time I like started running on the treadmill after about 3 months, and that was really exciting. And then that winter, I didn't go back to skiing, but I started snowboarding. I just threw on a snowboard and didn't know how, but I was like, it's not as hard on the knees. And so just kind of like being really committed to getting back to where I'd been, and also the distraction of the physio and of the blog I had started, the writing, and then having good friends who supported me, came to my house, were like, do you want to go for a drive, Kendra? I was like, yeah, let's go for a drive. And then they take me for a drive and I'd stick my head out the window and I'd like a dog because I was so excited. I hadn't left the apartment for days. I was just like waiting for someone to like show up at my apartment. But yeah, I think just the hope that I could get back to where I had been was really what pushed me forward. And I did. I wouldn't say I'm skiing like I did back then because I don't want to ski like that anymore. I ski recreationally now. I ski for fun and not to wreck my body.
Yeah. So obviously that was a really redefining moment in your life. And so let's go back. Let's go to the third element of this 4Q podcast, which is the redesign. And so, you know, after these defining moments where people create meaning or purpose, or life just throws them a curveball and they've got to pivot, this is the point where you redesign and you go, okay, who am I? What is my life going to look like? All of those things. Can you tell me a little bit about your redesign journey and how you went from a skier to this business strategist / course creator, you know, because that's a big shift, right?
It's a huge shift. Yeah. And I mean, I think part of it helped that I didn't exactly plan it. It kind of just happened. And so I didn't overthink it that much. But yeah, I think so much of this, what you call redefining, or this sort of transformation that I went through, was actually in building the business, you know. And and you probably know this because you run a business, but what a lot of people don't realize is how much personal and spiritual development is involved in building a business. And people don't expect that, and it rocks them, right? And not everyone's up for that. But for me, it was the best thing for me because it really helped me figure out more of who I was and who I wanted to be in the world, and just gain a lot of confidence, right? It's been really challenging, but I wouldn't be who I am today without that. And, you know, when I first started my business, like most coaches or anyone starting an online business, totally clueless, didn't know what I was doing, was trying to DIY the entire thing, which is kind of not something I recommend. And I think most people do it that way because they're trying to save money and they don't realize it's that hard. But, you know, obviously had I hired a mentor, I think it would have gone a lot faster. But, you know, when I built the business and I started health coaching, I learned so much about myself. And I also realized that I actually just love the business side of things. And that's kind of how I ended up in business mentoring and online strategy, was just the fact that like health coaching was fun, but the strategy was way more fun for me. And then recently, kind of the mindset of it all, because some of the most successful entrepreneurs that I know personally and who do really well, you know, have 7-8-figure businesses, like they're incredibly spiritual and they've done a lot of very deep work on themselves, because I really do believe that is what is required to build that type of, creative business. Right. And so, yeah, like I feel like through building a business and learning more about who I am, I've really been able to like leave the anxiety and just be more confident and more happy in who I am, because I really love what I do.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm wondering, it was interesting you mentioned in the Redefine how you mentioned how you didn't go to high school very much because you were training so much for skinny things. And something that I've noticed go two ways, two directional, is if people start off sort of in that physical training, so whether they're a swimmer or a footy player or whatever, it's like they're learning the discipline that they can transform into different areas, and vice versa. I've seen people who have no fitness and then all of a sudden they start running, and that mental discipline where it's the psychological you have to push through, not the physical, because physically your body can actually do anything you push it to do. It's the psychological.
Yes.
Do you think that growing up in that environment where you were competitive, because I can feel that energy in you too, like you want to be the best of the best type thing. I can feel that, and I can feel that discipline in you, that sort of like, I'm going to do this, and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%, and I'm going to do it great. Do you think that was a big part of how you were able to just pivot and throw yourself into something and commit?
Yeah, I've never really thought of it that way, but I actually do think it's probably part of it, because I have a lot of duality in me. Like I'm an overachiever, but I'm also the girl who, in university got drunk every day and never went to class and relied on my excellent memory to just cram and ace all the tests, right? But in high school, I was very academic. I was an athlete, not only in skiing, but in soccer, field hockey, taekwondo, everything. My parents pushed us pretty heavily into sports and competition. So I've always been a big achiever. And then I got a bit burnt out and didn't really do that in university. Still did well, but definitely did not go to class. But it definitely helps me, because I was talking about this with my partner the other night. I was like, why have I been able to do it so easily when other people struggle so much? Because I mentor a lot of people. I see them struggling, and I've been very dedicated. But part of it is that achievement, that like need to achieve, which can be good and bad, right? I think it helps me build a business, but I do know that I've tied a lot of my self-worth into the achievement of the business, right? Like, and it's something I've had to work on and separate and realize that, just because I didn't make the money I wanted to on that launch doesn't mean I'm worth less.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think, I guess a really great point is that, anybody who's listening to this, Kendra's been through it. I've been through it as well, where I think sometimes, I guess one mistake that I make, I see people making as well, and I'm not sure if you see this, but they're coaching people on something that they have no idea about because they've not been through it, and they've not pushed themselves outside of the comfort zone and done the work. Because when you go outside of that comfort zone, that's when all the insecurities and the vulnerabilities come through, and you're like, oh, hey, old friend, nice to see you again. Let's have this little internal fight with us, and that's something that you've just been straight up honest. And you said this at the start of the podcast, is when you start a business, and I see this with project development too. If you start a business project, whatever it is, it brings up all the things you haven't processed yet. And, do you think that's what the difference is with you, is that you've done the hard yards and gone through it, as opposed to someone who's like, I think I know what that feels like?
I definitely think it's part of it. And, early on in my business, I did start getting into personal development and therapy. And I did a lot of, trauma release and a lot of stuff like that, and just started to become very aware of my triggers and the things that, like the wounds that we all carry, right? And so I think that really helped me in my business development. And I think it still helps me, because I've done I mean, I'm like a junkie for personal development now, like I've got like 3 counselors, an energy healer, like I do acupuncture, I do massage, like I do all of the stuff because I'm really just committed to trying to be the best that I can for myself, for my friends and family, and for the business as well. But yeah, I agree. A lot of people just don't know how hard it's going to be. And they don't realize when they're new that what is happening is that their old wounds are getting triggered. Like they don't realize that. And they just think what they're experiencing is truth, right? They're like, they're experiencing imposter syndrome because they have self-worth issues that go back to whatever, childhood, high school, whatever, but they're just like, believe it's true. They're like, oh, well, I just don't know enough. And that's the truth. But really, it's not true. They actually know enough, and they just don't know that because they're not even aware that they're getting triggered,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree. And I'm glad that you brought up that you're a personal development junkie and you have a person for everything. Because
Yeah.
I know again that you mentioned earlier in the podcast around these 7-8 figure business owners. We had Jason Shuey on in our first podcast, which is earlier, and so he co-founded RL Solutions, this massive software company, major mogul, and he talked about that too, is that it's that all the theme that I see with all the guests that I've had on so far is that spiritual element. And when I say spirit, I don't mean religion necessarily. It's like that, it's that gut intuition, like what is my purpose, what is this telling me, the life is guiding me in this direction, and do I listen to the signs? Has that been part of your journey too, do you think?
I think I've really just started to embrace spirituality recently. I've been very like not open to it. I've been very like, ooh, I'm a science person and that doesn't make sense to me. But I've really started to kind of realize some sort of connection to maybe spirit or divine or something greater, just in the time that I spend in nature. And, specifically last fall. So if, I don't think this happens in Australia, but if you can remember being in Canada in the fall and you get all the leaves changing color and it's just so beautiful. Yeah. And so there's this walk that I used to do when I was living in town before we moved out to our property. And it's the old rail line and it's got all this beautiful deciduous tree. And I remember just going up there in the morning and walking down it and doing this walking meditation. And I was like, oh my God, like I just felt something. I felt something deeper. I felt just connected to the entire world. Like we were all just this one big ball of energy. And it was just this really cool experience. And since then, I've definitely been exploring it more. And I do think it helps me, not only personally, but in business, just to have that, greater connection, because we really need, with business being so hard, and I'm in year 7, I still find it fucking hard. Like today I'm like freaking out over my Facebook ads, feeling like I want to give up, it happens,
Yeah.
right? But just that connection to a greater power and feeling that you're a part of something and that you have a mission or a place in this world, because we need to be motivated by much more than just money,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I love how you can sort of beautifully articulate how those other things articulate to your business. I think in this capitalistic world that we live in sometimes, that there is so much focus on growth, money, work, that we, things like play and rest are nowhere near as valued as the work and the grinding. It's like, and again, it's those old sort of expectations from previous generations and our generations, that if you want to be successful, well, you've got to work an 80-hour week. Like, that's unrealistic and you're going to burn out. So yeah, you might have this successful business, but you've got no friends and family because you had no time. You've got no physical health because you haven't been working out. You're exhausted because you haven't slept in about 10 years. So I love how you can really articulate how having these coaches and exploring these things is really translating to all aspects of your life to create an amazing life for you and your partner on the top of a mountain.
Yeah. I
that.
mean, yeah, I mean, I love that so much. And I really, really, I hope that people in the audience like realize the importance of, finding some sort of spirituality. It doesn't need to be religion, right? It can be anything, and it doesn't even need to have a name.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just, in my business, one of our key frameworks is the biopsychosocial spiritual model, which basically means there's four sides of a table in our life: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. And if any of those are getting missed, you're going to feel off balance. And
Yeah.
spiritual is the one that most people miss, because again, 50, 60 years ago, most people had some sort of religion, and now we've all sort of gone, okay, organized religion can not be so healthy sometimes. For some people, it's absolutely amazing, but it's sort of realizing that spirituality doesn't mean, having a shrine full of crystals. For some people it does, for other people it doesn't. It can mean exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm having these moments of connection with nature and with people, and I'm able to make sense and meaning in my life that's greater than beyond me. Like, again, those moments, like your redefining moment, like falling off a cliff and tearing your ACL, when you start to embrace that spiritual aspect of our life, you start to realize, like, hey, maybe that happened for a reason. Like, if I didn't have that really shitty period of my life, who would I be? Where would I be? I know my redefining moment, which I'm yet to share with our podcast audience. I will maybe in 100 episodes or so. But I know for me, I sometimes feel like I actually think I'd be a really shitty person if I didn't go through the hard times. Like, I'd be a bit more sort of narcissistic or materialistic, like if I didn't go through some sort of meaning making moments. So I love that you're exploring that more, and you mentioned that here as well. So I guess we're up to our final aspect, which is realign, which I think we've touched on it a little bit already, but it's sort of like, what do you do now to stay on track and to stay calm and clear and content? Because one thing that, for those of you who aren't familiar with Kendra, one thing I really appreciate when I follow you, because I'm obsessed with your stories and all your Instagram stuff, you do come across as very grounded and clear. And I think sometimes people get this misconception that people who are grounded and clear just woke up that way. Like, they're just naturally charismatic, or they're just naturally like that. But actually, I see those people go, yep, they're doing the work, they've done the work, they've come out the other side. So tell me, what brings you joy and happiness now? What makes you clear, calm, and content now?
Yeah, I love that you say that, and I'm so glad that that's what I come across as, because I used to be such a hot mess, and I can still be a hot mess sometimes. And I used to be very anxious and fearful. And you're right, it is because of the work I've done that I'm able to feel clear. And part of what I do to keep myself in that way is running my business based off of like the energy that I have. And if you're familiar with human design, I'm a projector. And this is kind of one of the less known energy types, but basically I don't have a lot of energy. I have to be very intentional with the energy that I do put out there, because I don't have consistent access to it. So I'm also someone who needs a lot of alone time. So I've really spent the past year building my business around being a projector, which basically means that I'm working less, right? I try to work 5 to 6 hours a day. And that works really well for me, because I can be super productive during those 5 to 6 hours. And when I work more than that, I just don't feel as good. And so for me, it's really about having a really amazing morning routine that honestly looks different every day. I sort of have a little menu that I choose from. But, waking up and getting movement first thing, going for a walk, doing a stretch. I love to get out and walk in the morning if possible. I love to do breath work. I find that really kind of brings energy into my cells, into my muscles, and it makes me feel a little bit like high in a good way, which I dig. So I do that. I love to read, I love to drink my coffee, and just I really take a very long morning. And then I try to move throughout the day, like I have a little app on my computer that tells me to take a 5-minute break every 45 minutes. So I try to lift some weights, do some lunges, like walk around the house, do an inversion or something, do a headstand or something like that, just to get the blood flowing. And then, I always like to do something fun in the evening. Sometimes that's biking or, hiking, something outside, or just like hanging out with a friend. But I think for me, it's really about, and I don't like the word balance because I feel like it's almost a myth. We go through periods of hustle. Right now I'm about to launch, so I'm not definitely, I'm working a lot right now, but I also spent the last 3 months gallivanting throughout the summer. So, it's about finding, I guess, that overall balance that doesn't always happen on a day-to-day basis, but happens kind of throughout the year, and always honoring where I am with my energy and, trying to take the time I need for myself when I need it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I guess before we wrap up things today, a couple of things. One, you mentioned around being very conscious of your energy, and that's something that we talk about in my courses as well, is around, we actually have an activity where you map out where your energy's going, and then sort of again redesign things from there. For you, that's not something that most people do naturally. They don't wake up one day and they go, I'm going to map out my energy today. So like, where did you get mentoring? Did you do an online course? How have you become this grounded, clear person? Because to say you did it on your own, like, that's an achievement. But I'm wondering if you ever got any help along the way.
So something that has really shifted the way I look at my energy was my own health struggle. I used to have like chronic fatigue, and I did for about 7 years. And I was pretty much going through that up until maybe a couple years ago. So, when I started my business, I was in very deep fatigue, like 2 out of 10 energy. And it's actually amazing that I started a business in a lot of ways. But I've always had to be very mindful of my energy because I never had it. And everything made me tired. So it helped me become very aware of like what takes my energy and what gives my energy. And where I am right now, even though I'm in a much better place, my energy is much better. I feel good. I don't have many bad days anymore. I'm very aware that I could go back there if I'm not careful, right? So it's sort of something I've developed out of necessity, and I've worked with a few different people who've really helped me define boundaries, because I think boundaries are incredibly important in any conversation about energy, because most of us don't have any, right? We have like the worst boundaries within ourselves, with other people. And so for me, because of that struggle with energy, I had to get really kind of clear and assertive with my boundaries, because, when I was in the middle of that, I wasn't able to stay up past 9 o'clock, wasn't able to just splurge and like have a cheeseburger, because like everything was making me sick. Right. So I had to be like, people are like, stay out, have a drink. And I'm like, no, I'm going home. Oh, come on, stay out, have a drink. I'm like, goodbye. So, like that honestly, I think it's partially, it's a lot through my own experience, but I think in the past few years, some coaches that I've worked with have really helped me understand boundaries and healthy boundaries, which has been a big game changer.
Yeah, definitely. And so finally, obviously, thank you for our amazing chat today. I feel like, you're just a bundle of energy, like infectious energy in a good way, not a boundary crossing way. But yeah, infectious energy. And so tell people where they can find you so they can have some of this energy too, because I know I get a lot out of your Instagram stories. That's where I found you. That's where I'm obsessed with you ever since. So tell people where they can find you.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Instagram is definitely the place where I'm usually hanging out. So my handle is at Kendra Perry Inc. So anyone can follow me there or shoot me a DM, because I answer all my DMs. I'm always happy to chat with people. And my website is kendraperry.net. If anyone goes to websites anymore, I don't know.
Awesome. Again, thank you for our chat, and you have a wonderful week, day, and good luck with your launch. And thank you again, and hopefully in the future we'll cross paths again and do something together.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kendra. Bye.
soon.